tous et bienvenue dans cette session qui va, vous allez voir, nous transporter dans un univers totalement parallèle, à la fois proche et lointain, puisque l'on part donc dans le métaverse. Alors, le métaverse, c'est un univers totalement virtuel, auquel on peut accéder via un ordinateur, via notre téléphone. Alors pour les versions les plus immersives, on peut mettre des lunettes 3D, voire des combinaisons carrément qui nous permettent de ressentir physiquement ce que l'on est en train de vivre. Dans le métaverse, on évolue avec des avatars. Vous pouvez choisir d'être un être humain, vous pouvez choisir d'être un animal, une girafe, un ours, ce que vous voulez. Et on peut donc faire beaucoup de choses dans le métaverse. Dès aujourd'hui, on peut jouer, c'est la première chose, mais on peut aussi s'habiller. Il y a des véritables collections de mode qui sont déjà lancées dans le métaverse. On peut assister à de véritables concerts d'artistes. On peut bien sûr payer en crypto-monnaie et on va pouvoir bientôt probablement s'y soigner. Le métaverse dans la santé ou bien la santé dans le métaverse, est-ce que c'est un rêve ou est-ce que c'est un cauchemar? Et pour répondre autour de cette table ronde, nous ont rejoint vraiment des spécialistes de la chose, à commencer par le docteur Michael Kaldash qui est en duplex avec nous depuis Amsterdam. Bonjour, vous êtes allemand. Vous avez exercé en France, notamment à l'hôpital Georges Pompidou à Paris, entre autres, et vous vivez aujourd'hui aux Pays-Bas. Alors vous auriez dû être des nôtres aujourd'hui sur cette table ronde. Malheureusement, le Covid, la patrouille Covid vous a rattrapé avant-hier. Vous avez dû annuler votre déplacement, mais magie des réalités virtuelles et réelles. On vous retrouve en duplex depuis Amsterdam où vous vivez. Et vous avez créé la société Animé, dont l'un des projets en cours, et c'est déjà une réalité, c'est de développer une véritable cité de soins dans le métaverse qu'on va découvrir d'ici quelques minutes et dont vous allez nous expliquer entièrement le fonctionnement. Autour de nous, il a pu quitter, lui, le Royaume-Uni, heureusement, le docteur Shafi Ahmed. Vous exercez à Londres. Merci d'être des nôtres aujourd'hui. Vous exercez en oncologie. Vous avez créé également la société Medical Realities, qui est spécialisée dans la formation de professionnels de santé, des médecins, des chirurgiens, beaucoup de chirurgiens avec des outils de réalité virtuelle. Aussi, là, on va le voir, des lunettes 3D et quelque part, finalement, une plongée pour apprendre son métier sur des patients totalement virtuels. Christophe Jauquet, bienvenue. Vous êtes belge, conférencier, et vous faites également partie d'un accélérateur français qui s'appelle Digital Pharma Lab. Et puis, vous êtes surtout à la pointe, sentir toutes ces nouvelles tendances qui arrivent en matière de soins. Et puis enfin, Maud Lambert, bonjour. Vous êtes avocate avec une spécialisation, entre autres, dans santé digitale. Et votre présence, elle est importante puisque la question du métaverse, c'est aussi la question des données de santé, une fois de plus, de leur protection, de la protection des patients, leur utilisation et certainement aussi la responsabilité des professionnels qui vont exercer ou qui exercent déjà dans le métaverse. Alors tout le monde dans la salle n'est ici pas forcément familier du métaverse, ne se rend pas forcément dans le métaverse tous les jours. Alors avant d'entamer les débats, justement, je vous propose de voir en images, de faire une petite plongée dans ce qu'est cet univers, le métaverse, avec une société, une vraie société, qui développe un vrai projet, j'insiste là-dessus, qui est un projet d'environnement propice aux soins des pathologies mentales et qu'on découvre tout de suite en images.
2020 has been a strange year. The uncertainty that's come with it, amplifying feelings of stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness. While in quarantine, I built Bump Galaxy, a virtual world and community for mental health. In it, players can visit several different care commons, a forest for breathing meditations, sand dunes where you can reflect on your dreams, a snowfield and underwater temple designed for hypnotic imaginings. In Bump Galaxy, players can meet different mental health professionals from around the world. Imagine a joint therapy session with a relationship counselor from Sweden and a hypnotherapist in Japan. Imagine participating in a collective sound bath in the rainforest by one of your favorite DJs. My name is Bianca Carage. I'm a social designer and natural healer. As someone who does energy work and guided meditations, I've always wanted to work with a psychotherapist to give clients the care I wasn't qualified to provide. What if different health professionals collaborated, supplementing conventional methods with alternative therapies to provide more personalized, holistic healthcare experiences, in a game world that actually meets the level of intimacy many of us crave, that conventional telehealth platforms lack. So what does it mean to bump into each other, actually? To gently collide, in surprising and meaningful ways pregnant with possibility.
Voilà un exemple d'univers parallèle où pour certaines personnes c'est plus simple d'aller exposer une pathologie mentale, de rencontrer un médecin, d'avoir accès à d'autres formes de thérapie. Plus simple d'y aller sous forme d'un avatar, un petit Lego, un petit animal, un petit bonhomme, plutôt que de se rendre dans un lieu physique de soins. Je me tourne tout de suite vers Amsterdam et vers le docteur Michael Kaldash qui est médecin, j'insiste beaucoup là-dessus, de formation. En tant que médecin, ce monde, cet univers où les patients apparaissent sous forme d'avatar, c'est pas un peu effrayant quand même? Alors attendez, on a un tout petit souci de son sur le retour. On va... Voilà, c'est parfait, merci beaucoup. Je vous posais cette question, est-ce que vous n'êtes pas effrayé par le fait un jour de voir des patients arriver sous forme d'avatar?
So I think so. The question was if it's frightening. Was that correct?
Oui, exactement.
Okay, so that depends a little bit on how you approach it and how you take a look at the idea of the metaverse. We as a healthcare provider and a company who builds the first healthcare metaverse, we want to make people clear that this is not a place to fear, but a place to find additional services and to find an additional place to get therapies, to get consultations, and to get anything you need in healthcare whenever a real doctor or a hospital is not in your area, or when there's not the right time to be at a hospital or at a doctor. And of course, all kinds of new technologies are frightening at the beginning. I mean, it was the same with the internet 25 years ago, but people got used to it and saw the advantages that this has. So I don't think it's frightening.
Alors, vous avez dans votre société créé ce projet, c'est des généralités de cité de soins virtuels dans le métaverse. On va la découvrir en même temps que vous nous parlez, on va la découvrir un peu en images. En tant que patient, qu'est-ce que je vais pouvoir faire dans votre cité de soins, dans cet environnement?
So we offer, the thing is, just to make it understandable. So what we built here is it's a computer game, right? And so it's something that people already know from computer games, multi-massive online player games, etc. But we put in a real healthcare economy. So people will be able to collaborate, to work with each other, to meet doctors, to go to hospitals, to get services from pharma companies, to buy drugs in a pharmacy, to get education, to meet other patients with, for example, rare diseases. And people can get all kinds of services like therapies, consultation, education. They can have social interaction, and there's research that can be done. So we basically mirror all things that happen in the real world healthcare economy into the cyberspace and offer people an additional place to get use of it.
Les patients, moi en tant que patient, quand je vais rentrer dans cette cité virtuelle, je vais devoir choisir un avatar, choisir la forme dans laquelle je vais apparaître. Quels sont les avantages ou quelles sont les différences en tout cas pour un patient d'aller sous forme d'avatar dans ce type d'univers?
So the thing is that there are clearly defined roles in Avalon. So it's not possible to just register as a doctor or to just register as a pharmacist. So we have the users/patients on the one side and the professional users on the other one. So all doctors, all pharmacists, nurses, healthcare providers that operate in Avalon are real healthcare providers in the real world. So because we have our medical platform behind it that already offers this identification of users, right? So we make clear that everyone who is a doctor in the metaverse is a real doctor. And of course, people can register as a normal user and can create their own avatar. So we have working with Ready Player Me at the moment, and we will also add the functionality of meta-humans via Unreal Engine in one of the next stages. And people can create an avatar like as they want. So they can look the way they want, they can wear the clothes they want, they can style themselves the way they want, but they cannot take a role that they are not in the real world. So we clearly make these differences and take care so that there is security for everyone.
Mais est-ce que, en tant que patient, pour moi, le fait d'aller sous forme d'avatar dans ce type d'univers me permet d'avoir un autre type de relation avec le personnel soignant, d'exposer d'autres pathologies, d'exposer des questions peut-être où je n'ai pas compris les explications de mon médecin physique. Quels sont les avantages ou les différences pour le patient?
Yeah, so it's completely free what you can do inside Avalon. So you can, as I said, you can meet other people, you can meet a doctor, you can go to a pharmacy, you can use services. So you're really moving in a free world. So it's not like you get certain rooms where you can enter, you really enter a free world. So we just started with a land sale. So we are selling virtual land in our metaverse, and we have the first cities, which consist of Dubai, Singapore, and Lausanne in Switzerland. And you have to imagine it as a real city. It's a 3D city that has several institutions in it, hospitals, practices, pharmacies, universities, and places for workout, for example. And people can move freely inside this world and can go to a place they want to. There will be advertisements, there will also be navigation, so people are just not lost in this virtual world, but they say, okay, I'm searching for a therapy, psychotherapy, for example, or I want to work out, or I want to learn something about nutrition. And then you can navigate the map and you can go to exactly that spot that you need and to get this service that you are searching for. So you can move freely. So we do not only offer these medical services, we also have like recreational places. So you can go to, in Dubai, to a desert area where you can relax, you can enjoy the surroundings, etc. So move and explore, and you can do a lot of things. But when you are searching for special services, you just navigate the map and you go to exactly the spot that you need.
On peut bénéficier de consultations, rencontrer de vrais médecins derrière. Et vous dites, on est vraiment dans une cité de soins, pas dans une cité de bien-être. Et à tout moment, lorsqu'un médecin sous forme d'avatar suppose une urgence avec un patient, à tout moment, on peut revenir dans le monde réel. Comment est-ce que ça se passe?
So, very, very important. So what we always tell our users, and we have already started working with users, the metaverse, a healthcare platform, is never a place for any medical emergency. So whenever you have the feeling that there is a medical emergency situation, you call the emergency services, you call an ambulance. You are not going to a metaverse and you are not going to an internet platform, right? Of course, there will be situations where maybe a patient is not able to recognize he's in a dangerous situation, but as soon as he speaks to one of the doctors that operate inside Avalon, the doctor recognizes, okay, there is an emergency situation. They will always say, please leave the PC or call 911, or we even take care of that and make sure that the patient gets help he needs at any given time. So we're not replacing healthcare. It's just, all these IT services, e-health applications, metaverse, whatever happens in virtual healthcare is not a replacement of the real world treatment. It's just an additional layer that you have to get services that you can use online, of course, but we are not replacing emergency services, and we are urging people to clearly distinguish between that and services that can be taken inside the virtual world.
Il y a un autre point également qui est fondamental dans la manière dont vous avez conçu cette cité virtuelle du soin. J'insiste, ce n'est pas un jeu, ce n'est pas du bien-être, c'est réellement un lieu de soin. C'est que vous partez du postulat qu'un patient n'a pas nécessairement besoin de voir son médecin. Et en réalité, d'ailleurs, la plupart des consultations ne nécessitent pas une rencontre physique Est-ce que vous pouvez détailler ce point?
So, I mean, you know, we have a lot of these discussions already in the past when we started with the iMatters platform to make this clear differentiation between services that can be taken online and services that have to be taken in the real world. You know, we did some research, of course, before we started. And as you said, I was working in hospital for a very long time, and I got in touch with thousands and thousands of patients. And what I learned, but what also statistics and what research by health insurance companies say, is that a lot of things, a lot of context that patients have with the healthcare services can and could be performed in the virtual world. I can tell you some very practical examples. You are in an emergency room and someone comes to the emergency room at 3 o'clock in the morning because he got a new medication from his family doctor, and he read this little piece of paper that comes with the drug and reads something about side effects and is completely afraid and doesn't want to take the drug and is bothering about taking it and what will happen and so on. So this person comes to a doctor or to an emergency room even and wants to get help. Of course, this person could be helped in a virtual consultation, though there would never have been a need to go to a hospital, but people do it nonetheless. And also in France, there is this, I mean, I've been working in Paris for quite some time, and there is the same situation. People come to hospital because they have questions that could be solved online. So, and it's a large amount. So one of the statistics of a German health insurance company, Balmer, said that up to 80% of all contacts between patients and doctors could be held in a virtual environment. So people would not have to go to a practice, would not have to sit in a waiting area, would not have to be in an emergency room where there is maybe some other person that can infect them with COVID, with flu, whatsoever. So there is a large place for virtual services.
Est-ce que ça veut donc dire que ce type de solution, cité de soins dans le métaverse, cité de soins virtuels, est aujourd'hui l'une des clés pour répondre aux problèmes d'engorgement médicaux dans les hôpitaux physiques ou de désertification des services médicaux?
Yes, definitely. You know, the problem with the classical e-health applications, and I know it firsthand, is the acceptance is not as high as many people hoped it to be. And that's everywhere the same. It's in the US, in Asia, in Africa, everywhere. People cherish the opportunity to speak to a doctor via a video chat like Zoom, like we are speaking now. But it doesn't have the impact that people hoped. And I mean, after COVID, this rose, but there is still a barrier, right? Because a computer screen is somehow a barrier for patients, but also for doctors. And the 3D environment that really gives you this inclusion and where you have this immersive interaction, where you have an avatar, where you have, you know, things that you see in 3D, things that you think you can touch, is a different level and gives you much more the feeling of being there. So we see the metaverse as a large opportunity to replace services in the real world and to give people more immersiveness and trust in what they see and what they can receive.
Christophe Jauquet, vous êtes conférencier, vous êtes surtout observateur, on va dire, de toutes ces nouvelles tendances sociétales qui apparaissent. Je sais que vous partagez beaucoup d'observations que vient de donner Michael Kaldash. Entre autres, ces études qui prouvent que certains patients, contrairement à ce que l'on imagine, hésitent à parler à leur médecin de certaines pathologies et que parfois le virtuel peut être plus efficace que le réel.
Yeah, I think Michael said it perfectly in a sense that there's a lot of stuff that people don't want to talk about, because it's too personal, because they're maybe a little bit afraid of it. I've worked quite some time in erectile dysfunction, and men hesitate to talk about it with their physician. And what I've noticed is that the physicians that prescribe the most Viagra in this case, they were the ones that were living in remote areas and like almost in away from the villages and all of that. So that nobody can see that somebody was actually going in and out there. The same for pharmacies. So what you see is that there's a lot of therapies, there's a lot of disease areas that people just rather want to have, not too much disclosed because there's some shame to it. Same goes for STIs, sexual transmitted diseases, and there's plenty more, of course. And I think we see this already in the way that people behave online. They are more I mean, they're at ease to share some thoughts that otherwise in real life they wouldn't share that much. And I think in the media that might be having a negative effect, but I think in healthcare that might just be the opposite. Because if you dare to share more about how you feel, about who you are, about the troubles you're facing, I think that is what we're looking for here.
Est-ce que ce que vous nous dites a également un effet générationnel? Est-ce qu'on n'est aussi pas en face d'une génération aujourd'hui de jeunes patients qui seront aussi à l'aise, voire plus à l'aise dans cet univers virtuel que dans l'univers réel?
I think what we see is a lot of things start with the younger generation. Older generation, they have a little bit more hesitancy to take that up, to really go into something new. On the other hand, what I do see as well is that the older people, they are more hesitant to talk about stuff as well. So for them, exactly the metaverse might be the best solution, because they might be a little bit more hesitant to talk about how they feel erectile dysfunction or maybe some other diseases. That's why I believe that specifically for the older generation, I think they might benefit a lot from it, maybe even more than the younger right now.
Christophe Jauquet, j'aimerais bien rester sur une phrase qui m'a marqué lorsque l'on a préparé cette table ronde. On est ici dans une université de la e-santé. On parle souvent beaucoup de technique ou de technologie. Et pendant longtemps, on a pensé que la télémédecine, la télésanté, c'était d'abord de la technique pour relier les personnes. Or, vous m'avez dit en préparant cette table, cette phrase, on a souvent utilisé la technologie pour changer les processus de soins, mais pas pour changer l'expérience patient. Est-ce que vous pourriez développer, s'il vous plaît?
Okay, so here's a take on it. What I do believe is that within the current healthcare system, we're too much focused on processes. So if we think about how can we incorporate a certain technology, whether it's the metaverse or telehealth or anything, we always think from the inside out. We think about, we have this process, how can we integrate it in the process of a hospital? Well, I believe that this is the wrong way. I think the thing with technology is that it provides another experience, an experience that very often they already have outside of the healthcare system. And basically what I'm trying to convey to people in the healthcare system is that people exactly expect that. People expect that kind of experience. So the healthcare system should a lot more focus on how can we create that experience for the patient, and not think from the inside out and saying like, we have this process, how can we integrate this technology into our current process? I think that is the biggest difference to me is to how technology is applied within healthcare.
On avait déjà l'expérience, on sait que le patient, lorsqu'il entre dans la salle d'attente de son médecin, va déjà un petit peu mieux. Certaines données, comme la tension, par exemple, vont mieux que lorsqu'il est chez lui en train de stresser. Ça veut dire que là, avec le Metaverse, on fait un pas de plus. Et en me créant moi-même mon univers apaisant, c'est quelque part moins traumatisant que d'aller dans un hôpital, que d'aller dans un centre de soins spécialisé, que d'être au milieu d'autres malades autour de moi.
Yeah, totally. And I think we should have that in mind. I think that the example that I love to use is telehealth. We also talked about in the preparation is that like during COVID, certainly telehealth was rising and there was a high number of patients and physicians that were using it because we had to. And everybody was like, wow, look at this. I mean, we are using telehealth, and it was a big celebration in the industry. And it really made me mad because that technology is 20 years old. We've been calling through Skype ever since the early 2000s. So we are expecting, as patients, as human beings, we are expecting these kind of experiences also in healthcare. But it was, with health, I mean, it was slowed down because of processes, because of reimbursement, and because of all these difficulties that we create in the industry. So I think that the fact that we were using telehealth suddenly during COVID was not a celebration. It was a sad truth that if we need to, then we can do it. So we shouldn't be waiting until it is necessary. We should actually provide that experience that people are looking for, are longing for ever since.
Des tas de questions et des tas de nouvelles possibilités avec le métaverse qui restent passionnantes. Dans le monde qui a été créé par Michael Kaldash, on est dans un métaverse où ce sont des médecins réels qui vont aller soigner des patients qui sont aussi réels derrière. Est-ce que dans d'autres mondes que créent d'autres sociétés, on peut demain imaginer avoir des médecins en intelligence artificielle vers lesquels les patients vont aller se confier?
Yeah, I totally think so. I mean, I'm having the closing keynote tomorrow, and I'll be talking about digital humans as healthcare providers. And part of that digital human could be fully artificial intelligence. And I think that there are use cases, and the question is always, what is the exact use case? In what case we really can apply this? I don't think it's necessary or useful in any case or in all cases. But I really think that we should think about where can we help, again, the access and the fact that there's so much burnout, and we can definitely get into hospitals these days. So I think there are solutions out there that we can work with.
Ouais, et dans cet univers qui est à la fois très déstabilisant et très interrogeant pour les personnels soignants, on serait tenté, pourquoi pas, de balancer d'un revers de main l'intelligence artificielle et les robots pour nous soigner en disant non, c'est pas humain. Vous dites non. Quand on regarde des études, quand on regarde des statistiques, on s'aperçoit que le patient a une autre attitude vis-à-vis de l'intelligence artificielle, une autre attitude vis-à-vis du robot qui n'est pas si négative que cela.
Ouais, effectivement. I'm suddenly starting in French, whatever. But it's more easy to speak in English, so I'll stick to that. But no, what I do believe is that because people know that it is a robot or an AI, they structure their responses way better, and they will make sure that they think about how they get their message across, because they know it's a robot and they want to make sure that the robot understands them. So if you're talking to a human being, you're just like blah, 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 and you're like very human. But if you know it's a robot, you might structure the way that you reply to the question in a more structured, calm, better organized way. And that helps to better understand what the patient is going through. So this is one of the examples of how I believe AI could be very useful. That said, if you talk about digital humans that maybe have even faces, human faces, there was a recent study that came out, I think in February this year, that showcased that people trust AI-generated faces more than human faces. So again, showing that people might be eager to talk more in a better structured way with an AI, with an avatar, than maybe even with a human being.
Ça veut dire que vous êtes en train de nous expliquer que, d'abord, on le sait, le robot, contrairement à l'humain, il a le temps. Il peut prendre 1 heure avec son patient s'il a envie. Il n'a pas ce rapport émotionnel qui fait que, par exemple, il va pouvoir aussi refuser de voir un patient avec une pathologie parce que la chose lui est difficile à concevoir, ce qui arrive à l'humain. Le robot n'est pas sensible à ce type de choses. Et le robot, et on sait que l'explication par le patient aide à la conscientisation de sa propre pathologie, aide à l'expression de sa pathologie et parfois même au remède pour y aller. Le robot peut être un bon outil pour cela.
Yes, I think it's a triage kind of thing as well. So first of all, you get more. The patient gives better information to a physician, and the physician can the AI physician, and the AI physician can give better information to the patient repetitively. Because if you didn't understand it, I mean, you can watch it again, or you can ask again to explain it, while a real physician might not have the time to do it. So yeah, I really think that there's a lot of opportunities there. So I'm not saying that everything is good, obviously, but the thing that I've always wanted to get across is to really think about what are the opportunities here, and how can we use that as quickly as possible and not wait until the whole world is already in the metaverse and then we suddenly think about, yeah, but how should we apply it and what is the process? I think we really should think about what is the added value and how can we implement it today for the patient.
Michael Kaldash, je me tourne à nouveau vers vous depuis Amsterdam. Vous avez fait le choix dans votre cité virtuelle qui existe aujourd'hui, qui est déjà en expérimentation avec des hôpitaux aujourd'hui, d'avoir de véritables médecins derrière les avatars. Pourquoi, alors que l'intelligence artificielle a aussi ses avantages, ne pas basculer de temps en temps sur l'intelligence artificielle?
So I think there are strict use cases both for human and for AI doctors. So let's talk about very simple things like the anamnesis. When you talk to a patient and you want to know certain things about his or her condition. And I regularly notice that in hospitals, but also in doctors' practices, when people come with quite simple diseases, let's say it like that, like high blood pressure, a lot of things are not being approached completely or correctly after the medical guidelines because the human factor, no time, stress, a lot of patients waiting outside. So questions are being dropped and patients do not disclose the entire history. This is a very, very good use case for an AI that asks you standardized questions and elaborates on the answers that you give it. On the other hand, there is this human factor. Let's speak about rare diseases or certain details of certain diseases where an AI would still be inappropriate, because as a doctor you still need this diagnostic sensation somehow, right? You see a patient and you have the opinion something's wrong, and it's not happening because you pose questions. You just take a look at the person and you notice there's something wrong, or the patient answers you and you notice, okay, that's not the complete answer, the patient is hiding something, or the patient is not telling me the truth. So that is something where an AI would fail and where the human factor is very important. But as I said, on the other hand, standardized things, standard operating procedures and executing on guidelines and things, AIs would be, of course, better. So I think the combination of both AI/machine learning, algorithms, and the human factor are important. So I would not focus on only human doctors or only AI, but always the combination of both is, I think, the key to success.
Docteur Shafi Ahmed, vous êtes soignant à la base, il faut vraiment le rappeler, chirurgien. En plus, vous évoluez dans un univers qui est difficile, qui est l'oncologie, qui demande énormément d'humanité lorsque l'on parle à des patients. Quelle est votre réaction lorsque vous voyez ces mondes virtuels et la possibilité demain d'avoir des avatars en face de vous?
So, hi everyone, good afternoon. So I think it's not one or the other, that's the first thing. It's not exceptionalism, it's adding value to different ways of working, that's all it is. If you look at the continuum we're in, where face-to-face is still the model of care that we all aspire to, nothing will change the face-to-face environment, particularly when you have patients who require empathizing or breaking bad news or holding hands. It's still very much part of the human nature. But a lot of the healthcare system that we have could be developed or changed into virtual environments, or in the metaverse, for example. And so what we're seeing during the pandemic over the last few years is a change from people's perception about virtual care. 3 years ago, we didn't have virtual care. It was an anomaly. It was only exacerbated and supported and accelerated by the pandemic. Suddenly, 3 years later, we're now breaking bad news for cancer treatment on a telephone or on a telemedicine platform, which would have been unbelievable 3 years ago. Society is changing, it's adapting. And I think the patients themselves are very prone to adapting. We forget the end user, the patients. What do they need? What do they want? Now we're seeing they want care that's immediate, at home, at their convenience, avoiding the costs going to hospital, for example. It's community-based care and social care. The things have changed. Therefore, healthcare is also now relying on virtualization. So what do people expect? This is going to be a kind of conversation as we go on. What parts of healthcare can we practice virtually? What parts will we need to face-to-face? I think it's a smart move to think about different ways of working. If you look at the background, the cost of healthcare going up year on year. The GDP, for example, in the UK is at 9-10%. In the US, it's 7-20%. So we can't sustain that level of cost going forward. And that's expensive because of bricks and mortar, hospitals, buildings, and people. So can we have a smarter healthcare system that has more virtual care, that's more convenient for our patients, but also is cost-effective? And so it's about the experience the patient has. The other thing when you talk about the patients themselves is that experience. We talk about UI and UX in computer science, right? The user interface, the user experience. We never talk about that in healthcare. We don't worry about the experiences. So I think all of those kind of ideas lend themselves well to having therapy and healthcare in that metaverse. Even in cancer care, so for example, I'm a cancer surgeon, I have been for 30 years. I think what elements of that could be done? So for example, follow-up. If you have a cancer operation, I perform an operation, I'm a colorectal cancer specialist, and then we have a 5-year follow-up for cancer. Does that 5-year follow-up need to be done face-to-face? When all they do, the patients travel, maybe an hour, come to the clinic, wait 2 hours to be seen, pay a lot of money for car park charges, get anxious waiting, then they come in for a 5-minute appointment and say it's all fine, your scans are normal, and they go home. Is that relevant? Is that efficient use of time? Of course it isn't. Could that be done in a different way, with virtual avatars, holograms, appearing in your own room? So look, your scans are fine, we're all happy. Yes? So it's how much of that care can we push into a different way of working? And that's about the social re-engineering of society, is engaging with our patients and our public, also helping the medical profession develop those ideas as a kind of a hybrid model of working in the future.
Au fur et à mesure que je vous écoute, docteur Ahmed, je me demande si vous n'êtes pas en train, quelque part, d'inverser la relation médecin-patient. On a quand même été, et on est toujours, dans une relation qui est très descendante, très top-down, entre le médecin sachant et le patient, patientant d'ailleurs, par les temps qui courent, plutôt que patient, avec un médecin qui sait, et avec un médecin qui va aussi décider de la forme que la relation va prendre. Beaucoup de médecins vont encore vous dire la téléconsultation est un pis-aller. La véritable consultation avec un grand C, c'est la consultation de cabinet avec la palpation, sans se poser, comme vous le dites tout à l'heure, la question de ce que veut réellement le patient et ce dont a réellement besoin le patient. Est-ce que vous n'êtes pas en train de casser quand même une logique multiséculaire chez les médecins?
We have to keep developing. We can't carry on. Healthcare is broken. Okay, it doesn't work at the moment. As you know, we're spending endless amount of money, endless amount of effort trying to create a healthcare system that is just broken at the very sight of it. So you have to develop and change a smarter workforce, smarter way of working, and these ideas lend itself well. And patients themselves also, remember, are demanding change. They're not wanting to come to hospitals. They want to be well at home. They want convenience at their home. They want wearables, connectivity, etc., etc. So I think that is a changing paradigm. If somebody sits there and says, all I want to do as a doctor, to do face-to-face, I'm afraid they're going to be obsolete fairly soon because the system will just develop much faster than they are able to perform. We have to be productive. We have to be flexible. We have to change the way our models of care to allow different ways of working, allowing patients to be, be seen in different ways. So I think that is kind of where we are in the social construct of society. But I think also as doctors, we need to, embrace those new ideas almost as part of the leadership. You're right about the hierarchy. We've always been hierarchical in medicine. The doctor knows best, for example. That's changing. Does the doctor know always the best, or now is it a collaboration? Is it a partnership with our patients? I think it's changing, and the terminology is more about collaboration and key partnerships with our patients.
Christophe, vous vouliez rebondir sur cette idée.
Well, yes, I think, Professor Shafi said it really well. It is changing already anyhow. I think so. One of the biggest mistakes that healthcare is doing today, maybe, is that it's still a system-based approach, I call this. It's top-down. They say, we know better, you need to listen, and then you'll get well. But patients don't really think that way anymore. Imagine if a personal coach would say to you, you need to do 10 push-ups, and you can't do it after 5, you need to stop. And then he keeps on yelling to you. That's a drill sergeant. Today, personal coaches don't do that anymore. They say, if you do 2, it's already better than 0. And they start from the client. And I think healthcare needs to adopt that as well, that same kind of mentality where they start from the client, listen to them, and then try to bring their knowledge. If you just top down, it won't work anymore. Patients don't listen in the same way anymore.
Et on voit comment, à travers cette logique, on rentre encore plus profondément dans le web 3.0, encore plus immersif que ce que l'on a connu jusqu'à présent. Docteur Ahmed, une autre question. On disait que certains patients pourraient peut-être se sentir plus libres, exprimer plus facilement leurs questions, leurs besoins, leurs doutes, en étant sous forme d'avatar dans une cité virtuelle. Mais est-ce qu'il n'y a pas quand même pour vous, en tant que soignant, des éléments qui vont vous manquer? J'essaie de comprendre comment la relation patient-médecin est en train de se transformer dans le métaverse. Une relation, c'est aussi une rencontre. Face à vous, il y a certainement des patients qui expriment verbalement des choses et qui, par leur corps, sont en train d'exprimer le contraire ou toute autre chose. Et le regard du médecin, c'est quand même à un moment d'arriver à faire la différence entre les deux. Comment faire lorsque l'on a un avatar en face de soi?
Okay. That's a very good question, by the way. I think there's a few elements that we need to unpick. The value of the human interaction obviously can't be underestimated. The value of the body language, the sense of having a face, to seeing the emotions, for example, etc., absolutely very valuable. And that lends itself well to those key human interactions of intuition and judgment. Okay, and I think that's a problem we have going forward. Could avatars, holograms, or digital humans, for example, obtain intuition or judgment, which I think is difficult. I don't think we're ready for that yet. That's a difficult conversation. Maybe in 10, 20, 30 years' time, as we approach the singularity, maybe we'll have computers that are powerful enough or systems that are powerful enough. So, but again, it's about flexibility. It's not one or the other. Okay, we're not saying you either do this or you do that. No. It's a combination. It's a journey. It's a process. And we're discovering now, say for Michael's company, IMedis, working out what does that healthcare look like in the metaverse? What diseases or illnesses will lend itself well? Treatment. Do we just create a new hospital in the metaverse? Is that what's required? Or do you create experiences that might be more valuable, for example, for well-being, for mental health, for psychology, whatever, things that might add value in an immersive environment? Therefore, we have to explore what that new world could offer and what it could look like. And perhaps throw away the maps of the old hospital, of the old ways of working, and rethink that model. So I think it allows us to almost reimagine what could be possible in that sense, right? And that's what I think we should do. But again, that's a journey, time will take, and Michael will discover with his company IMedis, who I'm working with, to understand, okay, which areas can we contribute first? Then, to validate it. As researchers, scientists, we have to validate our work and ensure that what we're offering is quality.
Cela veut dire, dans votre raisonnement, qu'un hôpital virtuel, par exemple, pourrait, pourquoi pas, avoir, on imagine, des urgences virtuelles et effectuer un premier tri des malades, là où ils n'ont pas forcément accès à un hôpital physique, pour savoir qui doit réellement être orienté vers un médecin physique, vers une consultation physique?
I think it's going to be a mixture of those. Some will just have therapy. So the metaverse, remember, is not just about a place where you might see a person. And this is what I'll talk about in my keynote at 5 o'clock. It's creating the economy in the metaverse, right? It's the whole concept. It's payment models. It's how you share data, how you protect data, how you see people with avatars and holograms. It's having NFTs as a back end. It's creating a semantic web. It's not just about that one interaction. It's creating society almost within a society that's purely digital. So I think that's what people fail to understand when we're creating what's called the metaverse or the metaverse. It's much more than just having an interaction with a patient.
Dans les règles que pourrait totalement casser, par exemple, notre métaverse, une des règles, c'est la règle territoriale. Je ne sais pas comment les choses se passent au Royaume-Uni. En France, on est encore dans des règles territoriales très fortes, avec pourtant une proposition médicale très différente selon les territoires. On voit qu'en santé mentale, on en parlait dans cette même salle l'année dernière, la proposition de soins ou de soignants que vous avez en région parisienne n'a rien à voir avec la proposition de soins ou de soignants que vous avez dans la Creuse, pour citer un département par hasard. Or, on est encore dans un système où même pour être remboursé, il vous faut aller voir un médecin ou un professionnel près de chez vous. Est-ce qu'avec le métaverse et ces cités virtuelles, on n'est pas en train de renverser totalement la table ou l'échelle territoriale physique?
So it's actually more local than before. You remember you're separating different geographies, say in France, different centers, where you have to go and see certain physicians at certain places. That might be limiting for some people. Perhaps what this will allow you to do is democratize healthcare much better. Should you not be, as a patient, allowed to see anybody around France, or perhaps even around the world? If you pop into the metaverse, see the right person seamlessly and fairly simply, rather than go through the barriers of referral, through geography, etc. So I think you're creating a seamless society, a decentralized platform that actually democratizes healthcare. That's the vision we have. And perhaps we've got to think much bigger, than be constrained by geography and boundaries, and have care that is really simply universal.
Maud Lambert, avocate, vous faire soigner dans le métaverse demain, ça vous tente?
Je pense qu'il faut quand même tenter. Tenter pour effectivement interagir dans un univers qui effectivement casse les règles actuelles.
Ouais, le métaverse et tous les spécialistes le disent, pose déjà et va poser énormément de questions juridiques, notamment sur les données. Par définition, lorsque l'on entre dans un monde digital, je veux dire, à chaque seconde ou à chaque demi-seconde, on produit de la donnée. Tout ce que l'on écrit, tout ce que l'on dit est susceptible d'être enregistré. Nos données de médecine sont enregistrées. Le métaverse, d'un point de vue juridique, c'est quoi aujourd'hui? C'est le Far West?
C'est la page blanche un peu. Voilà, c'est un peu la page blanche. On est aujourd'hui, d'une manière générale en Europe, en train de réfléchir aux différentes manières dont on pourrait encadrer le métaverse. Il y a peu de chances quand même qu'au niveau international, on puisse tous se mettre d'accord pour créer un traité international qui régisse l'organisation du métaverse. À partir de là, on a deux options, c'est-à-dire deux options juridiques. Soit on crée un nouveau droit, complètement nouveau, dans lequel on va réfléchir comment on fait des contrats, comment on organise la santé. Et il y a une autre option qui est la solution la plus, en tout cas préférée, qui est celle de prolonger l'état du droit dans l'univers réel, dans l'univers virtuel. Voilà, c'est la solution préférée, et c'est d'ailleurs la solution qui, même si ça ne se voit pas juridiquement, s'organise dans la présentation qui nous a été faite tout à l'heure de l'univers virtuel qui est le prolongement de la vie réelle. Voilà. Donc c'est un peu l'option qui est préférée, étant précisé quand même que chaque univers pourra effectivement être encadré par ce qu'on appelle des conditions d'utilisation, où chaque utilisateur sera quand même contraint par des contrats indépendants, des contrats privatifs.
Ça c'est vraiment pour la protection patient. Côté responsabilité des professionnels qui vont exercer dans le métaverse, est-ce que là aussi on est face à des spécificités juridiques?
Alors, comme je disais tout à l'heure, on est probablement dans l'extrapolation au niveau virtuel de ce qui se passe dans la vie réelle. Et là, on se pose des questions, c'est-à-dire qu'on a des problématiques juridiques qui est est-ce qu'un acte réalisé dans l'univers virtuel peut avoir un impact sur la responsabilité ou la capacité juridique d'un individu, d'un patient ou d'un professionnel de santé dans l'espace réel. Voilà. Donc j'ai pas de réponse aujourd'hui parfaite, je suis désolée, mais en tout cas, effectivement, on se pose la question de savoir quelle est la meilleure manière d'appréhender tous les actes, que ce soit des actes de responsabilité médicale ou que ce soit des contrats ou que ce soit la protection des données, la protection des marques. C'est à chaque fois la même réflexion sur l'extrapolation.
Christophe Jauquet, c'est assez paradoxal cette question, pas simplement d'un point de vue juridique, mais j'ai envie de dire d'un point de vue sociétal ou d'un point de vue de l'usage. À la fois, on a notamment en Europe, et heureusement qu'on a une belle protection qui est la RGPD, une protection des datas, des données du patient, et des traditions selon les pays qui peuvent mettre, où on peut être plus ou moins ouvert à donner ces données à d'autres autorités. Et dans le métaverse, on veut en plus prendre un avatar pour ne pas apparaître en facial vis-à-vis de son médecin et présupposer une autre liberté. On a un avatar pour ne pas apparaître, mais en même temps, on laisse des données en veux-tu, en voilà, à longueur de seconde. Comment est-ce que vous appréhendez, vous, un petit peu cette question ?
Donc la question est quoi exactement ?
La question, en fait, est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, d'un point de vue patient, ce paradoxe pose un problème à la fois d'aller cacher via un avatar face à un soignant, donc de vouloir disposer d'un certain anonymat quelque part, et en même temps, à chaque seconde où on est présent dans le métaverse, on donne de la donnée.
Yeah, so I think there will be different scenarios. And in some cases, you won't be sharing your data or your personality. And other cases, you will. And in some cases, you will share your data, but then separately and not part of a bigger system. It all will depend. I also think that, first of all, there will be multiple metaverses. They probably will not be limited to country borders. So they will probably go beyond the country border. And so that will be interesting because we talked about reimbursement and the organization of healthcare as such. And I do believe that part of the metaverse will definitely help to bring the local aspect back again. And so you might get quicker to your local hospital. At the same time, what I do believe is that it will provide access beyond France. It will give access beyond your own country. And then we have a legal discussion what is going on. And I think with the Web3, what's coming up is that there will be different forms of legal entities as well. So in a nutshell, because we have the DAOs, the decentralized organization systems, and my answer to you would be there will be different forms of metaverses, there will be different forms of legal frameworks, and there will be different situations where you either share your data, part of a bigger dossier, or patient dossier, and some you won't be doing it. And what will be important is that it is clear where you are, it is clear what the rules are, it's clear who you're paying to, what you're paying for, and where that data goes. And that will be a big challenge for me.
Un dernier point avant de laisser la parole et les questions publiques, mais qui semble important dans le projet, entre autres de cité virtuelle de Michael Kaldash, qui est l'aspect formation. Vous avez dans votre cité virtuelle beaucoup d'espaces de formation. Alors pourquoi déjà autant d'espaces de formation et à qui sont destinés ces espaces de formation? Est-ce que c'est uniquement aux professionnels d'un côté, ce qui voudrait dire qu'il n'y a pas suffisamment d'informations dans les facs de médecine, ou est-ce que vous ouvrez également la possibilité d'avoir des formations médicales à des patients qui veulent en connaître plus sur leur pathologie, sur leur maladie, auquel cas on est vraiment sur un partage de la connaissance assez important?
Yeah, so all of it. As you say, professionals will be using the metaverse and the applications as a training facility. Students will use the virtual universities. Professor Ahmed can tell you a lot about that because that's one of his very focuses too. He's very specialized in. And also normal people. So let's talk about, you know, how do I measure blood sugar? How do I measure blood pressure? You can learn this in a virtual environment. So every person on the planet making use of a healthcare system at any given point will be profiting from the metaverse. What we've not yet spoken about, you know, we are always all the time speaking about patients, diseases, etc. But let's speak about preventing diseases, right? So primary disease prevention is a major issue when it comes to healthcare. So you don't want people even to get in touch with a doctor because they're not getting sick, because they're taking vitamins, they're doing sports, they don't smoke, they don't drink alcohol. But how do you reach people before they get sick? Most people get in touch with a doctor or start to think about healthcare when there is already an issue. And you don't normally get people who are 20 years old or 18 years old. You don't get them in touch with primary health prevention because they just don't think about the possibility of becoming sick at any given time. So I think there the metaverse and Web3 applications will be very strong in supporting this, because due to the technology that makes it interesting also for young people, you will reach people before they become sick, and you will pull them into these worlds and show them, okay, don't do this or do something like this, and maybe you have a low risk of getting cancer. You will not get a heart attack in 30, 40 years. That is very important. I think that is also one of the major strengths that this new technology will have.
Docteur Ahmed, j'ai envie de vous poser la même question. Quel est l'intérêt pour vous, qui avez fait en plus des espaces de formation virtuels, qui les commercialisez dans votre société, quel est l'intérêt d'avoir des formations supplémentaires dans le métaverse? Est-ce que ça veut dire que les facultés de médecine doivent s'ouvrir? Est-ce que la connaissance doit s'ouvrir à un public qui ne soit pas forcément non plus uniquement un public soignant?
Yeah, so if you take the last couple of years, where before education was delivered largely face-to-face, some of it was online on e-platforms, and we moved to kind of your Zoom and Teams platforms for learning, that gave itself an opportunity for virtual learning. So virtual reality, augmented reality is not that new. It's been around for a few years, but we lacked the market for it. The last 2 years, suddenly the world is crying out for new ways of learning as a kind of a continuum from the online platforms to this virtual world. So for example, now we're seeing major organizations, medical schools, universities, hospitals, embrace XR training. We call it XR, for example. So we've seen the advantages, for example, in surgical training, for simulation training, where it has huge value and additional value for the students. We've brought in some of the XR training at our medical school. So, for example, last year during the pandemic, I gave an example over lunch, that our students suddenly for a year could not go to the wards because of the pandemic. They were repurposed to the kind of the intensive care or nursing support. They didn't have any clinical experience. So suddenly we're in a hiatus with no alternative. I then used the XR technology to do live ward rounds in VR and XR on the wards, had the students in a different room, social distance, being trained and watching patients in clinical settings. So we had to adapt very quickly. What it meant to me is there's an opportunity here that we're not delivering. And now we're seeing huge interest. I'll give an example. So in the UK, Health Education England are responsible for postgraduate training of all healthcare professionals, including nurses and doctors. They have a budget of about 4 billion per year for training purposes. Last year, they paid, I think, about £5 million to buy headsets for the NHS. 300 HoloLens, 300 what's called HC Vive Pro. And now they are setting up immersive hubs across the UK to support training for healthcare professionals. That wasn't there 3 or 4 years ago, because people are seeing the value now. For surgical perspective, also VR, a company in the US, have shown that for surgical training, VR has over 200% more advantages in terms of learning experiences. The Mason report showed that the learning in VR was 80% more than traditional online or e-learning platforms. So you see now the kind of the use case, the kind of the validation of those experiences. So I think now we move to a hybrid model. There'll be some face-to-face, which is absolutely fundamental and important to medicine, face-to-face clinical teaching. There's the online simulation, and now this virtual training, which adds more value. If we're looking at workforce that's diminishing, across the world we have a problem with workforce. There's a huge shortage of doctors and nurses. So how do you train people in a different way, quicker, more smarter? How do you give them the resilience, the training required on virtual platforms? So I think that also answers some of the questions around future workforce planning, smarter workforce, they're educated in much faster time. And those are the key advantages of being trained in that metaverse.
J'ai 3 toutes petites dernières questions avant de clore ce débat. La première pour Christophe Jauquet. On a souvent pensé que le métavers était une affaire de, si je caricature, de geeks boutonneux qui font du jeu vidéo le soir entre minuit et 4 heures du matin et qui sont complètement absorbés par leur ordinateur. On voit très bien aujourd'hui que c'est absolument pas ça. Et je fais l'écho à ce que me disait Benjamin Revkolevski ce matin, directeur général de Fujitsu, à propos de la 5G, dont on a longtemps aussi discuté dans cette salle. Il me disait, elle viendra, la vague est là, que vous la vouliez ou que vous ne la vouliez pas, la vague elle est là et la 5G va s'imposer, peu importe les oppositions. J'ai envie de vous poser la même question sur le métaverse. Est-ce que la vague est là, qu'on le veuille ou qu'on ne le veuille pas, elle va s'imposer? Et certainement par rapport aujourd'hui à des autorités de santé ou des dirigeants qui ne sont certainement pas dans cet univers-là, est-ce que malgré cela, elle va s'imposer?
Yes. I mean, it will happen. I mean, it's technology. It's a progress of technology. I think the real danger, because the name of the debate was, is it an opportunity or a danger? I think the real danger is that technology moves faster than we can adapt. And I think healthcare is super slow in adapting. And I think we have a role to play in healthcare to make sure that people can adapt. This is our role. It will come faster than we can imagine, maybe even. And so the role that we need to play is like, where will we use it and how can we make sure that people adapt accordingly? This is our role in healthcare, in my opinion at least.
Monde.
Alors j'ai plus une question. La santé est organisée, au moins en Europe, sur la base de politiques de santé. C'est-à-dire on est politique publique de santé qui organise notamment quel type de soins permet un remboursement. On sait que, en tout cas en France, les patients gèrent ou en tout cas gèrent ou demandent la prise en charge de leurs soins pour se faire soigner. Et donc que même si on a des plateformes privées, elles restent, en tout cas je parle de la téléconsultation pour donner un exemple, les plateformes privées restent sur le marché parce qu'une partie de leurs actes sont pris en charge par l'État. Ma question, c'est, dans le métaverse, on arrive dans un univers sans limite, quid de la prise en charge des frais?
Christophe.
Can I take this? Okay. Well, I think Michael might have some answers on that as well, but I think it's a misconception, in my opinion, that people only need reimbursement before they do something about their health. Because if you look at the health and wellness sector, like really the wellness industry, it is 4 times as big as the pharmaceutical industry. It is twice as big as all health care expenditures in the world. And the cost of health and wellness is typically lower. So people are like really expensing, they are paying 4 times as much for their health outside of the system than inside of the system. So I believe that there is a market already today that will speed things up. Do we need reimbursement? Yes, because otherwise it won't be social anymore. But I really think there is an opportunity to go there, to start, even without reimbursement, because this is what people will be willing to pay for.
Michael Kaldash, en quelques mots, cette cité de soins virtuels aujourd'hui, elle en est où? Parce qu'à force de dire virtuel, on oublie que c'est déjà une réalité. Où est-ce que vous en êtes dans son développement? Ah, attendez, on va vous remettre simplement le son. On a perdu votre son. Ou alors, allô. Michael Kaldash. Ouais, excusez. Je ne sais pas si vous... Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Alors, on a un petit souci de son avec Michael Kaldash. Il a peut-être coupé son micro. Je reposerai la question tout à l'heure, si on peut voir avec lui pour recorriger le son. Ouais, non, on l'a vraiment perdu. Peut-être vous pouvez nous aider là-dessus, Dr Ahmed, sur le projet de Michael Kaldash. Où est-ce qu'on en est dans cette cité virtuelle?
Yeah. Okay. So what they've done, they've created the economy of a healthcare city. First of all, they launched their token about a year ago. This is based on cryptocurrency and the blockchain. So they have a tokenization which allows you to reimburse and pay for certain services. That's the first thing. Second, they've created an NFT marketplace to be able to share data and store data for patients. So there's 2 things they've done to create the infrastructure for healthcare society. The actual land, if you like, they've actually worked with Berlin city planners to map out what land could look like. They've launched 3 cities, Lausanne, Singapore, and Dubai, in the first tranche. They've divided into certain pockets, so you can buy certain land, and now they've collaborated with a number of institutions, including 5 and others, who've bought land in the first sale. So they are really far advanced in understanding what does that healthcare city look like. Then they'll be building services going forward in partnership with organizations. It becomes a platform everybody else can build their ideas onto and expand rapidly. And that metaverse will connect with other metaverses like Decentraland or DHealth and others, for example. So it's creating the landscape, the economy, the user base, and the collaborations that are necessary, the first point, to create that healthcare city. So that's what they've done. And they've worked on Unreal Engine 5, which is a new software that allows photoreal images. The other platforms like Unity or Unreal Engine 4 create those cartoon-like appearances, which are not realistic. Unreal Engine 5 is a game changer. It allows you to depict yourself as yourself and the environment that we're in terms of photoreal quality. So that's kind of where that trajectory is going towards. Hope, if you heard that, Michael, I hope I did you justice.
Yes, I hear. I was muted. Sorry. So what I wanted to say is thank you very much, Professor Ahmed, for the details. So, question: where do we stand? So, together with Professor Ahmed, we presented the first version of the product in January this year in Dubai on Arab Health, and we started the development back in 2021. And the first version will be available for the public next quarter, so people will be able to already experience this year. So it's not just an idea; it's really there. And we made a first medical trial with the university hospital in Switzerland and treated the first cardiologic patients in the Metavers, which actually ran very well. And so we already have real medicine in the metaverse, and it will be there already this year.
Ouais, donc on voit que c'est déjà du réel avec de vrais patients, des hôpitaux qui sont impliqués et l'industrie pharmaceutique qui crée déjà ses propres univers virtuels. Allez, en une phrase, Dr Ahmed, qu'est-ce qui vous fascine, vous, à ce point-là, dans le métaverse?
I think it's the unknown. It's the journey into the future, right? Because I think many of us are futurists because we come here together to think and plan. What I like about it is to really help people reimagine what health could look like, what education could look like in the future, and actually building for that future for ourselves and being in a position to, as a clinician at the front line, to create that journey or lead departments or organizations into understanding it better is just, I think, a great position to be in. And so I love the excitement around it, also around the anxieties that people might have around implementing change or translating into new clinical practices. But I think it's really exciting, and why wouldn't you want to be part of this?
C'est une excitation, en tout cas une passion qui est très communicative de votre côté. Merci à tous les quatre. Ne bougez pas hein, pour cette table ronde qui doit certainement pas laisser indifférent. Enfin, je vois Bruno Salles qui est prêt dégainé avec le micro. On va vous apporter le micro immédiatement. Cette session quand même métaverse. Rêve ou cauchemar? Allez, on y va très vite pour une petite dizaine de minutes. Il y a une question ici en face, Bruno Salles. Et puis voilà, levez, voilà. Monsieur, ensuite derrière, qui on pourra amener un micro. Alors je demanderai, comme il y a beaucoup de questions qui arrivent, hein, se présenter, questions courtes, comme ça, des réponses courtes également en face de nous. Bruno.
Bruno Salles, moi je suis un vieux con d'informatique et de télécom. Donc je le dis, je suis un vieux con.
Je te laisse le copyright de ta définition.
Bon, en 97, il y a un monsieur qui s'appelait Alain Derrière, je recherchais les dates pendant que vous parliez, qui a créé ce qu'on appelait le deuxième monde. Et moi, en tant qu'avatar, je pouvais me promener dans le deuxième monde. Et si j'étais j'avais bien fait mon promenade, j'étais projeté sur Canal+, après. En 2003, on a eu le Linden Dollar, on a eu le truc que moi j'appelle double face ou double jeu, mais qui en fait s'appelait en anglais Second Life, qui était exactement ça, des métaverses. Et plus rien. Hein. Aujourd'hui, le Linden Dollar ne vaut plus rien, le Second Life, c'est un champ de ruines, hein, c'est pire que l'Ukraine. Hein. L'Ukraine à côté, c'est joli, hein. Le Linden Dollar, c'est pas joli. Et tous ces projets-là ont capoté. Tous les projets virtuels ont capoté. Tous. Donc, moi, j'ai une question que je me pose. 1, pourquoi est-ce que ça marcherait? 2, depuis, à cause de ça, on a créé 2 choses. On a créé le sommet mondial de la société d'information en 2003, World Summit of Information Society, et je suis un des créateurs. Et deuxième chose, on a créé, et ça c'est un de mes copains qui est créateur, on a créé le Forum pour la gouvernance de l'Internet. C'est des COP, hein, des comités des parties de l'ONU. D'accord. Alors, donc, comme un collègue juridique, n'oubliez pas, mes chers juristes, les COP aussi. Ça a quand même un sens, les COP. Ils ont des pouvoirs réglementaires et des pouvoirs de proposition réglementaire. Alors maintenant, moi, ma question est simple. Pourquoi votre monde virtuel aujourd'hui va marcher? Qu'est-ce qui fait que ça n'a pas marché en 97? Qu'est-ce qui fait que ça n'a pas marché en 2003? Pourquoi ça marcherait en 2020?
Allez, on pose la question peut-être comme professeur Ahmed dans un premier temps, et on va amener, il y avait monsieur, bon, on va amener le micro par ici, ça se levait, on le fera tourner après. Professeur Ahmed, pourquoi est-ce que ça marcherait maintenant alors que ça n'a pas marché avant?
We have moved on in 20, 30 years, right? The world is a different place. When you talk about 1997, there was no smartphones. Now everyone has a first smartphone, ubiquitous. The technology's improved, the platforms improved, the headsets are much better. There's single platforms not connected to, for example, tethered, 6 degrees of freedom. We have motion tracking, eye tracking, real-life avatars, Unreal Engine 5, capacity for cloud computing, edge computing, 5G. The things around the ecosystem are being created. The economy has been created. Whatever you say about crypto and the sudden crash, we have a digital economy that's also been created, a society for reimbursement. We have some technologies that are now converging at the same point, allowing this to be much more productive and therefore much more likely to succeed. There's no guarantee. I agree with you, okay? It's still a discovery. I'd like to think we're in a better place than we were 20 years ago as an optimist, and it's for us now to figure out, does that work? And I'm saying we have to be sensible to make sure what we deliver is sensible for patients, risk-averse, being safe, and being effective. I think those are really important factors in creating this.
Je vais poser aussi très rapidement la question à Michael Caldas. Je lui demanderai une réponse rapide parce qu'on a beaucoup de bras qui se lèvent. Cette fois-ci, uniquement pas d'un point de vue usage, mais d'un point de vue business. Pourquoi est-ce que ça marcherait maintenant alors que ça n'a pas forcément marché il y a 20 ans?
Short question, short answer. I just would say the same that Professor Ahmed said. The technology is there. We have high-speed internet. Everyone has a smartphone that has more computing power than large computers back in the 2000s. So now is the time for the next step. We are stepping from the industrial age into the digital IT age. Most people still not notice that, but a lot of jobs will go loose, and things will change. The society is changing quickly, and IT is a central part of that, and technology, and thus the time has come. People do have the possibilities and the technology, so that's why we have a different situation than we had before. And as Professor Ahmed also said, of course, we are doing something completely new here, right? We have to find new standards. We have to adapt existing systems. Regulators and governments will have to adapt to this, but we are quite positive about that. So that's my answer.
Voilà. Alors, voilà.
Oui, c'est bon, merci. Tristan Debove, Équasens, mais je ne vais pas intervenir au nom de ma société, mais en tant que gamer, puisque vous souhaitez vous caler sur les pratiques courantes. Je ne sais pas qui est gamer ici, mais vous avez certainement joué à des RPG en univers ouvert, comme Skyrim, Assassin's Creed. Et il y a une qualité graphique absolument exceptionnelle. Est-ce qu'on va trouver cette même qualité graphique dans le Metaverse? Et est-ce qu'on a les budgets pour réaliser ça dans le Metaverse, sachant qu'une production d'un jeu vidéo, c'est plusieurs milliards d'euros, millions d'euros.
Michael Kaldash, rapidement aussi, s'il vous plaît.
Yes. So yes, absolutely right. So when we take a look at GTA 5, for example, which I think took $100 million US, of course you're right. So it takes a lot of money, and that's also why we are at the moment doing the land sale and changing money for virtual land to pay for the development of this. But yes, it will have AAA game graphics. So we orient on the latest games and on all capabilities that Unreal Engine 5 gives, including ray tracing, including all the new technology like Lumen and Nanite that this engine offers, and the great scalability it has from a smartphone up to PlayStation, up to a GeForce RTX 3090. So yes, it will have the same quality, and it will have a very detailed environment that looks much better than, for example, GTA 5 did, and that will exactly cope with the actual games that will be coming out.
Monsieur.
Oui, bonjour. Déjà, merci à toutes et à tous. Donc moi, je vais essayer d'être assez synthétique, mais est-ce que, dans l'ensemble, ce projet de santé dans le métaverse ne va pas apporter plus de problèmes, plus de contraintes juridiques, techniques, mais sur la protection des données, mais également des risques, comme si cela se répand à une grande échelle, parce qu'actuellement c'est une petite échelle, donc c'est facilement contrôlable, mais sur d'usurpation d'identité, mais sur, par exemple, des gens qui seraient passés pour des médecins alors qu'ils n'en sont pas, si quelque chose se répand, et donc beaucoup de risques et de problèmes pour, au final, un bénéfice qui, certes, est existant, mais pas très significatif, au final.
Qu'est-ce qui peut répondre? Peut-être Maud, tout d'abord.
Rapidement, sur le juridique, on est sur... Alors, le Parlement européen s'est déjà positionné. Il a dit la réglementation de protection des données RGPD, GDPR s'applique dans l'univers du Metaverse. Et ensuite, toutes les problématiques, en tout cas toutes les interactions, que ce soit de l'usurpation d'identité, sont en réalité les mêmes que celles qu'on peut trouver dans l'univers réel. Et donc, une des solutions juridiques, comme je disais tout à l'heure, c'est que ça soit les mêmes conséquences dans l'univers, évidemment adapté, parce qu'on est sur un territoire qui est différent, mais en tout cas avoir les mêmes conséquences juridiques au niveau virtuel que réel.
Autre question en face.
Yes, so my name is Sarah. I'm co-founder, CEO of Aura Medical. So we're doing a remote rehabilitation platform connected with sensors on walking devices. And my question is, how do you see, how can we reproduce the manual therapy? Because I really see the metaverse as like revolutionizing every type of like remote care. But how can you really reproduce the manual therapy?
Professor Ahmed.
I think this is work in progress. We don't know the answers to some of the questions being asked. We don't aim to have the answers. I think what we recognize very quickly is what value the metaverse and healthcare have, which therapies could you have. So cognitive behavioral therapy is an ideal one for mental health. We've seen VR therapies for rehabilitation, for pain control, even for pregnancy and analgesia. And that kind of, we're seeing already advantages where you can have immersive distractive therapy in an XR environment, which is same as the metaverse almost. So I think it's a voyage of discovery. And I think it won't be for everything or everyone, as I explained before. It's going to be a hybrid model. Some things don't serve well to metaverse. Remember, the metaverse is about having a physical, digital world merged together, almost independently. So you can go from one to the other, get good service in the digital world where you might need it, and good treatment in the physical world where it's necessary. And what that looks like, that's for us to discover as collaborators. That's the answer, isn't it? It's about collaboration.
Allez, il nous reste place pour quelques dernières questions.
Bonjour, Jean-Christophe Zerbini. Donc je travaille pour e-santé Occitanie. Donc on fait l'accompagnement des usages du numérique et on est une structure publique. Je dois avoir à peu près 250 questions à vous poser et je suis en panique pour en choisir une.
Alors une en 10 secondes.
C'est ça mon problème. C'est pour ça que je transpire à l'intérieur. Je ne sais pas comment je vais faire pour trouver une question. Si j'en ai qu'une seule, ça correspond par rapport à ce qui a été mis en avant, le fait que un des avantages du métavers, c'est le côté free world. On évolue dans un monde libre. On peut s'exprimer plus facilement sur les personnes âgées, sur les personnes plus jeunes. Voilà, on peut s'exprimer. Si on arrive avec un cadre juridique qui est celui que l'on connaît dans le monde réel et qu'on applique à ce monde virtuel, est-ce qu'on ne va pas finalement créer ou imploser cette dynamique et finalement, est-ce que le cadre juridique que vous portez ou que vous mettez en avant, il ne va pas être finalement, il ne va pas tuer cette dynamique. Et puis je voulais juste préciser, je ne suis pas cyberanarchiste du tout. Hein.
Je pense qu'on s'est posé les mêmes questions quand Internet est arrivé. Après, je n'ai pas la réponse absolue. Je pense qu'on reste quand même dans un univers qui finira quand même par être segmenté parce qu'on a des réglementations, en tout cas une culture du crime, de l'utilisation des armes, etc., qui est différente selon d'où l'on vient.
Est-ce qu'il reste une dernière question dans la salle avant de clore cette session? Apparemment, on n'a pas laissé indifférent. Allez, monsieur, on vous apporte une dernière fois le micro. Ça sera la dernière question de cette session.
Merci de me redonner la parole. Alors rapidement, pour revenir plutôt sur le domaine de la santé, mais en fait, que ce soit les réseaux sociaux ou les jeux vidéo en ligne, il y a beaucoup d'études qui montrent que cet enfermement chez soi peut provoquer des problèmes. Tout à l'heure, vous parliez de santé mentale, mais justement de santé mentale et de renfermement sur soi-même. Est-ce que ça, pour des acteurs de la santé que vous êtes, parce que des entreprises, pour le dire simplement, leur objectif est de faire du pognon, la santé de leurs clients, ça ne leur intéresse pas. Là, on parle de patients.
Sur qu'en santé, les entreprises ne font pas de pognon. Pardon.
Oui, non, pas sur la santé. Justement, les réseaux sociaux, par exemple, Facebook, tout ça, leur objectif, c'est de faire de l'argent. Là, on est sur du domaine de la santé. Leur objectif, c'est le bien-être des patients. Est-ce que cet enfermement chez soi et le fait que les gens vont de moins en moins sortir, contribuer à ça, est-ce que ça ne peut pas poser des problèmes dans l'ensemble et comment dire je me perds un petit peu, j'ai voulu parler trop vite.
Alors, la question,
c'est est-ce que ça contribue pas au fait
un enfermement,
oui, voilà, pour faire simple.
Christophe Jauquet, peut-être un regard un peu social là-dessus, sociétal.
I would say yes. I think the risk is there. We've seen that with social media as well. I think the same issues that we see with social media, we will see in the metaverse, probably even bigger. So that's why I said earlier is that one of the roles that I believe that healthcare should take up here is really guiding people into how can we live in this world. It's not just like a channel for us. It shouldn't be that. We also have a role to play into guiding people into how to behave in it, how to still come out, how to use it basically. And I think that is one of the aspects that we should take up because yes, the risks are there for sure.
Merci à nos 4 intervenants, on peut les applaudir, hein, venus de Londres, de Belgique, de Paris ou bien présents depuis Amsterdam pour participer à cette université de la e-santé à Castres-Mazamet. C'est donc la fin de cette session. Bonne continuation à tous et à tout à l'heure. Merci.